Hello, and welcome to the presentation, Rhetorical Ambition in the Botanical Displays of Harvard University. This talk is presented by Mackenzie Bullard and Ellen Deming from the College of Design at North Carolina State University in the United States. As a private institution with semi-public spaces that engage with public audiences, including students, parents, alumni, and tourists, Harvard's botanical displays are an integral part of an exhibitionary complex that has been under construction since the late 19th century. The term exhibitionary complex relates to Tony Bennett's theory of museums as sites of social institutional compliance, arising during the late 19th century when nationalism and colonialism sought to stabilize and consolidate cultural gains. Enacted in open and public spaces, zones of exhibition, including botanical displays, are material and symbolic acts that allow social and political leadership to take advantage of rhetorical appeal of and for cultural power. The purpose of these zones of exhibition is to show and tell historically situated institutional ideologies through representations of nature. In essence, as a tool for socialization, the museum and public garden supplanted 18th century institutions of physical disciplines, including prisons, workhouses, schools, and asylums, with 19th century bastions of culture, art museums, scientific collections, reference libraries, arboreta, and botanical displays. Our presentation, therefore, focuses on understanding the role of botanical displays in Harvard's exhibitionary complex since the late 19th century. In doing so, we trace through both tangible sites, artifacts, and practices, and intangible knowledge, curation, and meaning aspects of both the glass flowers and the gardens of Dumbarton Oaks. Harvard University exemplifies how ambitious institution may amass the resources and reputation to build an exhibitionary complex, independent of, but rivaling that of the state. In addition to the two sites we examine today, between the 19th and the mid-20th centuries, Harvard acquired several other major landscape components. Among the earliest components, the Arnold Arboretum, originated in a donation to Harvard College of agricultural land in Jamaica Plain, now part of Boston, in 1842. This was later enlarged and transformed into an arboretum in 1872. To preserve and catalog its growing botanical holdings, the Arnold Arboretum was built in 1909, expanding the capacity and reputation of the horticultural libraries and archives, along with diversifying outdoor collections. About the same time, a 4,000-acre forest field laboratory in Petersham, Massachusetts, was donated to Harvard College for its new School of Forestry, established in 1907. Soon after, in 1914, Harvard Forest became the site of the new forestry school's graduate-level programs. Harvard's landscape holdings, including Dumbarton Oaks and the Glass Flowers collection, represent a multiscalar spectrum of botanical displays. Such resources rely on rhetorical appeals to maintain their value, currency, and especially public and donor support. Simply put, rhetoric is the human ability to use textual, visual, or material symbols to communicate with one another. Rhetoric operates through four formal categories of persuasion: logos, pathos, ethos, and kairos. That is, rhetorical appeals of logic, emotion, and credibility, contextualized by the time, place, and mode of communication. Materially and rhetorically, then, we may analyze Harvard's institutional forests, sites, buildings, and interior plant collections as a manifold system of gardens. For understanding their persuasive mechanisms, therefore, our goal for rhetorical analysis is to highlight four relationships that are active in the botanical displays of two of our sites. 1. How does the developmental history of a place shape or inculcate the attitudes and expectations held by an audience? 2. How do realistic botanical materials and depictions influence proof claims and guide audience response? 3. How do botanical displays reveal, conceal, or substitute feelings, lessons, natural or organic processes, social intellectual performances, and programs? And what realities or identities may be limited or obscured in the process? And 4. What are the larger impacts, influences, and broader availability of botanical displays? How do discursive accounts illuminate, cultivate, and or shape beliefs, desires, and values for a situated audience? The Balashka glass models of plants is a novel type of botanical display that seeks to stabilize organic processes through manufacture, the craft of man in sculptural form. By the mid-1800s, Harvard University participated in the worldwide movement to construct public natural history museums and was a major center for botanical study. As a result, in 1879, George Lincoln Goodall, the director of the Harvard Botanic Garden and the first director of the Harvard University Botanical Museum, was tasked with acquiring lifelike scientific models of plants to, quote, make the collection an authoritative cabinet type of specimens to be described in an illustrated series of studies, end quote. The result was the Ware collection of Balashka glass models of plants, commonly known as the glass flowers. Produced from 1886 to 1936, the collection includes 4,300 glass models, of which 847 are life-size sculptures representing over 750 species and enlarged anatomical sections. By replacing earlier crude papier-mâché and wax models, adding accuracy in pedagogical forms, and presenting a vivacious botanical display to a public audience, the Commission brought to life Goodall's vision for the Botanical Museum. Goodall's goal was to match the existing zoological and mineralogical department's faultless collections in the Harvard Museum of Comparative Zoology. Goodall's interest focused on the glass sculptures of lifelike marine invertebrates by makers father and son Leopold Balashka and Rudolf Balashka. Knowing that the Balashka's naturalistic glass models were already respected and revered by other museums and scholastic establishments, Goodall was ambitious to secure the modeler's services for his botanical project. After repeated refusals and much coaxing, in 1886, Goodall persuaded the Balashkas to produce the first flower models for Harvard University. Much to the disappointment of the larger scientific community, the Balashkas became the sole botanical modelers for Harvard for over the next 40 years. By securing the Balashka's modeling skills, the botanical models were seen as scientifically accurate pedagogical forms, helping to bring to life the natural world as sculpture displayed in cherrywood cases. Promoted as exact copies of living plants, audiences were subject to a botanical virtual reality that blurred the line of having living specimens with a stable, manufactured copy of plants. In preparation to display the glass flowers, Goodall reflected on his experience at the Harvard Botanic Garden, where unattended and misguided visitors picked living specimens, moved labels, and made bouquets from the garden exhibitions. The result was securing behind plate glass and cherrywood cases, for audiences were trained to inspect and enjoy without touching, while the cases themselves were arranged to direct the bodily movement and attention of the visitors. Despite their fragile materiality, the glass flowers have been promoted far beyond the confines of Harvard's museum walls. To name a few, in 1893, select models were shipped to the Chicago World's Fair, participating in a series of institutional displays with, quote, relics and curios that cannot be purchased for gems or gold, end quote. In 1974, 3 models were temporarily exhibited inside a department store in Tokyo, Japan, as part of an exhibition titled Harvardian. And more recent displays include models on loan to the Corning Museum of Glass. The glass flowers also make their appearance in other popular cultural forms, from a mystery novel to a poem, as museum ephemera, in postcards, or as coffee table books. Notably, in 1986, images of the glass flowers were used by visual artist Christopher Williams to make a political statement about human rights. Most recently, visitors to the museum can schedule an on-site or virtual tour with a knowledgeable docent. In 2006, it was reported that, quote, the glass flowers have so filled the landscape of popular culture that the collection has been featured in nearly 400 articles since records were kept in 1893, end quote. On Harvard Museum of Natural History's website, the glass flowers are promoted as, quote, one of Harvard University's most famous treasures, end quote. As with the glass flowers, the developmental history of an institution tends to shape the expectations of its constituency. The Queen Anne era land grant and its mansion, encompassing over a century of Italianate renovations and additions to the original Federal period house and orangery, were purchased by Robert and Mildred Bliss in 1920. Renovated from 1922 on, planned as a bequest in the 1930s, and gifted to Harvard in 1940. At Dumbarton Oaks, the gardens are designed by eminent landscape architect Beatrix Ferrand. Her work and client list was shaped in part by her studies with botanist Charles Sprague Sargent at the Arnold Arboretum, and frequent visits to European gardens of England, France, and Italy. The Blisses' own wealth, connections, and contributions in turn anchored the special collections of the museum and library in pre-Columbian, Byzantine, and garden and landscape studies. Confidence in and reputation of the Dumbarton Oaks brand was produced in association with its owners as well as its designers. Over the course of Ferrand's close 30-year collaboration with Mildred Bliss, her construction and planting expertise and choice of materials and objects transformed 54 acres of forest and farmland into an Italian idyll. Through a variety of tropes, including local and exotic materials, Italian inscriptions, and iconography, and the sequencing of terrace rooms and circuits, visitors were invited to appreciate the gardens. Garden visitors thus comprised a sort of elite club, a textual community of visitors to Europe, as well as to one another's gardens, whose appreciation was educated and assured by design. Already in practice, as a respected modern professional woman at the turn of the 20th century, Ferrand's deep understanding of horticulture was steeped in a traditional Eurocentric canon. She understood her clients' needs to display eclectic collections of plants, as well as objects amassed during the heyday of acquisitive tourism, when wealth could buy nearly any kind of exotic botanic novelty or antiquity. Cultural intertextuality, well understood by Ferrand and the Blisses, is today sustained by elite scholars who experience the gardens during musical programs, annual pilgrimages to scholarly events and symposia, and residential fellowships. Dumbarton Oaks offers an elaborate system of public, usually out of doors, semi-public, ticketed, indoor, outdoor, institutional, including the library, museums, and private events. Such events attract a clientele who are uniquely predisposed to appreciate and protect its landscape, architecture, and other special aesthetic amenities, seeking the luster of Harvard as well as the elegance of the venue. As artful botanical displays, gardens too may reveal, conceal, or substitute new experiences for those of the extent, site, or context. Docents and visitors teach one another how to move, traverse the paths, appreciate views, read the iconography, and to behave as decorously as those for whom the gardens were originally designed. A visitor is visually, imaginatively, and socially transported to another place, another time, and even to another class. The complex of institutional resources comprising Dumbarton Oaks Research Library and Gardens thus allows Harvard to extend its intellectual reach to a secure and cherished cultural stronghold. Indeed, the rituals surrounding residency at Dumbarton Oaks are on par with those of the American Academy in Rome. As in Rome, the intellectual exclusivity of Dumbarton Oaks is explicit in Mildred Bliss's last will and testament. Quote, "Remember that Dumbarton Oaks is the home of the humanities, not a mere aggregation of books and objects of art, that the house itself and the gardens have their educational importance, and that all are of humanistic value." End quote. By examining various forms and mechanisms of the exhibitionary complex, we have started to apprehend some ways in which botano-spatial constructions operate rhetorically, influencing society and its belief structures. For in such constructions, nature is often presented as an intangible value, leisurely and bucolic, where the tangible material realities of labor, decay, disarray, danger, and potential disruption are concealed. In the pastoral mode of botanical displays, however, our relationship with ideals of nature and natural process may also transform our social relationships as well. Harvard's collection of glass flowers and the research complex at Dumbarton Oaks are comparable in their similarities. As representations of natural process, they both play with the tensions between stasis and dynamics of natural process, in terms of life cycle and seasonality, and in the soft fascination of botanical form and diversity. Yet both gardens are expressions of Foucault's heterotopic mirroring, and they remain very different places. Where Dumbarton Oaks is a tangible, real place, it refers to a mythical ideal conceived in a late Gilded Age fantasy of Italian grace and wealth, intangible and imaginary. And where the glass flowers are essentially unreal, artificial representations of real botanical reference, they are indeed tangible manifestations of manufacture by the human hand, disciplined artifice, and craftwork.